She threw it away right in front of me. Not angrily, not even with guilt. Just a soft, careless flick of her wrist, like my handmade gift, was nothing more than paper. It landed in the bin beside her shiny new vase, still wrapped in the same gold fabric I'd chosen with trembling hands. I remember the sound it made, light, hollow, cruel. She smiled as she turned away. "Oh, Ma, you shouldn't have gone through the trouble," she said, her tone dipped in sweetness, but sharp enough to cut. Trouble. That word stuck in my throat like a thorn. She didn't know, she couldn't have known, that the gift she'd just thrown away wasn't only silk and thread. It carried a secret. One that I had stitched into it with every heartbeat, every prayer, every piece of a truth she was never meant to find too late. I stood there, holding my breath, my fingers curling into the folds of my sari to stop them from trembling. "You don't like it?" I asked quietly. She turned back, laughing softly. "It's thoughtful," she said, her voice slowing on the word like she was searching for something polite to say. "But, we don't really use such traditional things anymore." Traditional. Another thorn. I wanted to tell her that traditions weren't decorations, they were promises. That the fabric I'd woven came from a piece of my wedding sari, the same one I'd worn when I started this family. But I said nothing. I just smiled, the way mothers do when they've learned silence hurts less than truth. And as she walked away, leaving the gift behind, I whispered to myself, some lessons come dressed as loss. Before that day, life in my son's house moved like clockwork. Slow, steady, predictable. I lived on the top floor, my son Ravi and his wife Nisha on the ground floor. We weren't distant, but we weren't close either. Nisha was what people call modern. She spoke softly but walked with confidence that filled every room. Her perfume lingered long after she left, and her laughter, bright and practiced, echoed off the marble floors. I liked her once. The first time Ravi brought her home, she touched my feet, shy and respectful. I remember thinking, she'll make this house warm again. But warmth, I learned, can fade quietly, like sunlight slipping off a wall at dusk. At first, it was small things. My old brass lamp moved to a corner. My spice jars replaced with sleek, labeled bottles. The family photos I'd arranged on the living room shelf, quietly taken down, one by one. "It's just a different aesthetic, Ma," Nisha said once, smiling as she scrolled through her phone. Aesthetic. I nodded as though I understood. But the truth was, I was still learning how to live in a house that no longer looked like home. Ravi tried to keep balance. He'd say, "Let her make it hers, Ma. She's trying." I knew he meant well, but those words sliced deeper than he realized. I had built that house from scratch. Its walls had carried my laughter, my tears, my prayers. And now, it felt like a museum where I was only a visitor. Still, I tried. I stayed polite, offered help, kept quiet when my opinions were brushed aside. I told myself love meant letting go. But the day of their wedding anniversary, when I placed that small, hand-embroidered wall hanging into her hands, the one I'd spent weeks crafting, I realized letting go can sometimes look a lot like being forgotten. Of peacocks entwined symbolized eternal love. My mother had taught me that pattern when I was young. But what no one knew was that inside the fabric, under one of the peacock feathers, I had stitched a small letter, folded and wrapped carefully in thin cloth. It wasn't a long letter. Just a few lines, a secret my husband had written before he passed. Words meant for Ravi when he got married. He'd left it with me years ago, saying, "When our son finds his life partner, give her this from both of us. She should know what love costs and what it gives back." But when he died, I couldn't bring myself to give it away. The letter felt like the last piece of him I had. So when I embroidered that gift, I slipped the letter inside, hidden between layers of silk, not to hide it, but to protect it. And then, that afternoon, I watched her throw it into the trash. The rest of the evening passed like nothing had happened. Ravi came home with flowers, the two of them cut cake, and laughter filled the house again, loud, bright, careless. I stood in the doorway, smiling, pretending not to notice how the bin in the corner still held my gift, untouched, forgotten. Later that night, when everyone had gone to sleep, I went downstairs quietly. The clock ticked softly, and moonlight streamed through the half-open curtains. The gold fabric peeked out from the bin, crumpled and stained with icing. I reached for it. My hands trembled. I wanted to pull it out, to rescue the memory it held, but something stopped me. Maybe pride. Maybe pain. Instead, I whispered to my husband's photo in the hallway. She didn't know, did she? How could she? And as I turned away, a thought crept into my mind, quiet but sharp. Some truths have a way of finding their way home, even after being thrown away. The next morning, the bin was empty. The garbage had been taken out. And with it, gone was the letter my husband had written for the woman who never got to read it. Or so I thought. The morning. After the anniversary, the house smelled of burnt toast and roses. Ravi had left early for work, and Nisha sat at the dining table, scrolling through her phone while her untouched coffee cooled beside her. I watched her from the doorway, pretending to tidy the vase of wilted flowers. She looked beautiful in that effortless way only youth allows, hair perfectly tied, nails polished, skin glowing with the kind of freedom I no longer remembered. "Did you sleep well?" I asked. She looked up, startled for a second, then smiled faintly. Oh yes, Ma, thank you. The party was nice, wasn't it?" "It was," I said. "Everyone seemed happy." She nodded, then returned to her phone. I wanted to ask if she still had the gift, if maybe, just maybe, she had taken it out of the trash. But the words sat heavy in my throat, refusing to move. I knew how that conversation would go. She'd smile politely, say something like, "Oh Ma, it was just an old cloth, right?" and laugh it off. So I said nothing. Instead, I walked back upstairs and began my day as usual. I cleaned my prayer corner, folded laundry, watered the tulsi plant by the balcony. Everything in me wanted to forget that golden fabric and what it carried. But forgetting is a luxury memory never allows. A week later, Ravi called me into the living room one evening. His voice had that soft firmness he used whenever he wanted to say something uncomfortable. "Ma, you know how you keep old things? The boxes, the fabrics, the utensils." I smiled, wary but calm. "Of course. Old things have memories." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Nisha's planning to reorganize the storage room. She said some of your old stuff might need to go. Would you mind letting her handle it?" My heart dropped. "Handle it how?" "You know, declutter," he said lightly. "She's trying to make space." "Space for what?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just for new things." After the anniversary, the house smelled of burnt toast and roses. Ravi had left early for work, and Nisha sat at the dining table, scrolling through her phone while her untouched coffee cooled beside her. I watched her from the doorway, pretending to tidy the vase of wilted flowers. She looked beautiful in that effortless way only youth allows, hair perfectly tied, nails polished, skin glowing with the kind of freedom I no longer remembered. "Did you sleep well?" I asked. She looked up, startled for a second, then smiled faintly. Oh yes, Ma, thank you. The party was nice, wasn't it?" "It was," I said. Everyone seemed happy. She nodded, then returned to her phone. I wanted to ask if she still had the gift, if maybe, just maybe, she had taken it out of the trash. But the words sat heavy in my throat, refusing to move. I knew how that conversation would go. She'd smile politely, say something like, "Oh Ma, it was just an old cloth, right?" and laugh it off. So I said nothing. Instead, I walked back upstairs and began my day as usual. I cleaned my prayer corner, folded laundry, watered the tulsi plant by the balcony. Everything in me wanted to forget that golden fabric and what it carried. But forgetting is a luxury memory never allows. A week later, Ravi called me into the living room one evening. His voice had that soft firmness he used whenever he wanted to say something uncomfortable. "Ma, you know how you keep old things? The boxes, the fabrics, the utensils." I smiled, wary but calm. "Of course. Old things have memories." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Nisha's planning to reorganize the storage room. She said some of your old stuff might need to go. Would you mind letting her handle it?" My heart dropped. "Handle it how?" "You know, declutter," he said lightly. "She's trying to make space." "Space for what?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just for new things." I looked at him, my son, my only child, and saw the gentle pleading in his eyes. The look that said, "Please don't make this hard." "Of course," I said, my voice quieter than I meant. "If it makes her happy." He smiled, relieved, and kissed my forehead. "You're the best, Ma. You always understand." But he didn't see how my hand trembled slightly as he walked away. I had built my life around understanding. Sometimes too well. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching streetlights flicker on wet pavement. Every sound in the house felt amplified, the creak of doors, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the echo of my own thoughts. Downstairs, I could hear faint laughter, Ravi and Nisha watching something on TV. Their world felt close to me now, like a room I could see into but not enter. And in that silence, a strange ache bloomed inside my chest. It wasn't anger, not even sadness. It was something quieter, heavier. I missed being needed. When Ravi was small, he would run to me for everything: lost pencils, scraped knees, broken toys. I was the answer to every question, the comfort after every fall. Now, years later, he looked at me with the same eyes, but behind them was distance. A kind of love that bowed politely but never reached for my hand. I told myself it was normal. Sons grow up, mothers learn to step back. But sometimes stepping back feels like disappearing. The next morning, I decided to visit my friend Leela across town. We'd known each other since college. She'd seen every joy and heartbreak my life had to offer. Her home was always warm, always smelling of something sweet on the stove. When she opened the door, she grinned. Look who finally decided to visit. Come in, come in." Over tea, she noticed the sadness in my eyes. "What happened, Maya? You look like you're carrying a storm." I smiled faintly. "It's nothing, really. Just life changing faster than I can hold on." "Your daughter-in-law again?" she asked. Gently. I didn't deny it. "She's not unkind. Just young. She thinks everything old is useless." Leela leaned forward. "And what did she throw this time?" I hesitated. "A gift I made for her. There was a letter inside." Her eyes widened. "A letter? What kind of letter?" "From my husband," I whispered. "He wrote it before he died. It was meant for her, to remind her what love really means." Leela reached for my hand. "Oh, Maya," I shook my head. "It's gone now. Maybe it's better that way. Some lessons can't be taught with words." But even as I said it, my chest tightened. I knew I didn't believe that. A few days later, while Nisha was out, the house helper came upstairs with a pile of laundry. "Madam," she said, "should I put these in the cupboard or?" I looked up from my book. "Whose are they?" "Madam Nisha's," she said, setting them down. Then she hesitated. There was something in the pocket of her kurta. I think she forgot. She handed me a folded paper, crumpled, faintly stained. At first, I didn't think much of it. But when I unfolded it, my breath caught. It was handwriting I hadn't seen in years. The loops, the slant, the careful strokes. My husband's handwriting. The letter. It was creased and yellowed at the edges, but still intact. My eyes filled as I read the first line, "To the woman who will love my son." My hands trembled so violently I had to sit down. I read every word: his wisdom, his warmth, his hope that she'd build a home where kindness lived louder than pride. At the end, he'd written, "If she ever forgets what love means, remind her. It's made, not bought." I held the paper to my chest and wept quietly, not because it was found, but because it had been found by her. The secret was no longer mine. When Nisha returned that evening, I watched her carefully. Her eyes looked different, red-rimmed, thoughtful. She avoided me all through dinner, hardly speaking, eating. She lingered near the sink, washing plates that were already clean. I approached her quietly. "You found something, didn't you?" I asked softly. She froze. Water dripped from her hands. I don't know what you mean." I gave her a small, knowing smile. "You do." Her eyes filled with tears, and when she finally looked at me, I saw guilt written across her face. "I'm so sorry, Ma," she whispered. I didn't know. I didn't know what I'd thrown away. She stood there by the sink, frozen in the silver reflection of the steel plate she was still holding. Her voice trembled the way mine used to when I first learned that grief doesn't make noise, it just hums quietly under the skin. "I thought it was just decoration," Nisha whispered. A cloth wall hanging. I didn't even look closely. You saw what you wanted to see, I said softly, not cruelly. That's what we all do sometimes. She turned, tears spilling freely now. I found the letter in the laundry, Ma. It must have fallen from somewhere. I thought it was a recipe at first, but when I opened it, her voice broke. I couldn't stop reading. I read it twice, and then I cried so hard I had to sit down. I said nothing. The sound of running water filled the silence between us. She wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at her, this young woman who'd once made me feel small in my own home, now standing before me with red eyes and trembling lips. Because love is a lesson, Nisha, I said. Not a warning. You can't teach it to someone who isn't ready to listen. She sank onto the kitchen stool, shoulders shaking. I was so foolish. I judged you for everything, your clothes, your ways, your stories. I thought you were trying to control me. You thought I was competing, I murmured. And maybe I was, in my own way. A mother never stops wanting her son's heart to come home. Her head lifted. He loves you, Ma. He always has. I smiled faintly. He loves, and peace only survives between people who choose to understand. She pressed the letter to her chest. He wrote about that, you know. Your husband. He said love is a slow apprenticeship, two people learning the same song from opposite sides of the house. My throat tightened. He used to say that to me too. We sat there together in silence, the kitchen light flickering softly above us. The letter lay on the counter between us, yellowed and creased, but glowing like it carried the warmth of a man gone long before her time. Later that night, I found her in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the rug with a box of old photos spread around her. She looked up, startled, then gestured shyly. I hope you don't mind. I found these in the cabinet upstairs. I smiled gently. They were waiting to be seen again. She picked up a photo, my wedding day. My husband and I standing awkwardly under garlands, too young, too hopeful. You look so happy here, she said softly. We were terrified, I laughed quietly. Didn't know what we were doing, but we promised to figure it out together. That's all marriage really is, a long figuring out. She looked down at the photo for a long time. I don't think Ravi and I ever made that promise. We just assumed love would run on its own. It never does, I said. Even the best engine needs oil. Her eyes shimmered with fresh tears. He's been distant lately, Ma. Silent. I thought he was bored of me. I shook my head. He's not bored. He's just tired. Love without gratitude wears people down. Her breath caught. Did you ever feel that way about him? Your husband. All the time, I said. There were months when we didn't talk much. But we kept doing small things, sharing meals, walking to the temple together, saying good night even when angry. Love hides in small routines, Nisha. It doesn't shout, it waits. She nodded slowly, absorbing the words like someone tasting water after a drought. The next morning, something had changed in her. She moved through the house quietly but with purpose, wiping dust off photo frames, lighting the brass lamp she'd once pushed to the corner, opening the kitchen windows to let the smell of jasmine drift in. I watched her from the staircase, my chest warm with a mixture of pride and ache. At breakfast, Ravi noticed too. What's gotten into you, Nisha? He teased, sipping his coffee. She smiled. Just trying to make this place feel more like home. He chuckled. You're saying it didn't before? Her eyes flicked toward me briefly, then back to him. Maybe not for everyone. He frowned, puzzled. What do you mean? Nothing, she said quickly, smiling again. Just trying to fix small things. I stayed quiet, pretending to focus on my tea. But in my heart, I knew the house was beginning to breathe again. That evening, Nisha knocked on my door, holding a small piece of fabric in her hand, a torn corner of the wall hanging. I couldn't save the whole thing, she said softly. But I thought, maybe we could make something new from what's left. I looked at the fabric, my fingers brushing the golden threads. What did you have in mind? A cushion cover, she said shyly. Something we can keep on the sofa, where everyone can see it. I smiled. So the past can sit with the present? Exactly, she said, smiling through tears. We spent the next hour sewing together. She held the needle awkwardly at first, pricking her finger twice, laughing nervously. You make this look easy. It's not easy, I said. You just learn to hide the pain. She looked up then, meeting my eyes, and we both knew we weren't talking about needles anymore. Later, after she went to bed, I sat alone with the finished cushion in my lap. The golden peacock feather gleamed faintly under the lamp. My husband's letter was safe now, tucked neatly back inside, sealed with a new stitch that only I knew. It wasn't secrecy anymore. It was continuity, his words living on in something reborn. I whispered into the quiet room, "You were right, my love." Some lessons find their way home. The next day, Nisha called me downstairs. "Ma, look," she said proudly, placing the new cushion on the couch. The morning light fell across it, and for a moment, the gold shimmered like fire. Ravi walked in, curious. "What's this?" "Our anniversary gift," she said simply, looking at me. He smiled. "You made this?" She nodded. "With Ma's help." He looked at both of us, surprised but pleased. "You two are becoming a team." "Maybe we always were," I said quietly. And for the first time, he laughed, not awkwardly, not politely, but fully, freely. I realized then that the sound of laughter feels different when it comes from forgiveness instead of performance. It fills a house the way sunlight fills a forgotten room. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought of my husband's letter again. His words, her tears, our stitches. And I wondered if, somewhere beyond the quiet ceiling, he was smiling, proud that his message had finally reached the heart it was meant for, even if it took years and a mistake to deliver it. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't come wrapped in perfection. Sometimes, it arrives after being thrown away. The days that followed felt different, lighter, almost musical. It wasn't that everything was suddenly perfect. It was that silence no longer hurt. Nisha had softened in small, beautiful ways. She began joining me for evening tea, sometimes chatting about work, sometimes just sitting quietly beside me as the world dimmed outside the window. There were pauses between our words, but they weren't cold anymore. They were comfortable, like two breaths learning to share the same rhythm. She even began cooking occasionally, not perfectly, but with effort. I'd stand beside her, watching her chop vegetables unevenly, and she'd laugh every time something slipped from her fingers. "I don't know how you do this every day, Ma," she'd say, exasperated. "You learn. Patience when you don't have a choice," I'd reply, smiling. One evening, she surprised me with something unexpected. "Ma," she said shyly, setting 2 cups of tea on the table, "I'm planning to restart my old art class, the one I used to teach before marriage. Would you come with me? Just for the first session." I blinked, caught off guard. "You want me to come?" She nodded. "You have an eye for detail. You see stories and things I'd overlook. I think that's what I lost somewhere, the ability to see meaning in small things." Her words stirred something in me, pride, nostalgia, maybe a little sorrow too. "I'd love to," I said softly. The next day, we went together. The art studio was small, tucked into a narrow street near the temple. The scent of turpentine and wet clay hung in the air, mingling with faint music from a radio. Watching her stand before a blank canvas again reminded me of a bird rediscovering its wings. She painted slowly, nervously at first, then with growing confidence, soft strokes turning into bold ones. At one point, she turned to me, smiling. I'd forgotten how good it feels to make something with my hands. I nodded. It's how the soul remembers it's still alive. When we returned home, Ravi was waiting in the living room. His tie was loosened, his expression curious. "Where were you two?" "Art class," Nisha said proudly, showing him her paint-splattered hands. He raised an eyebrow. "Art class?" "Yes," she said with a grin. "And Ma came with me." His eyes widened. "Ma did." I smiled faintly. Someone had to make sure she didn't paint the walls. He laughed, shaking his head. "You too. I don't even recognize this version of my family." "Maybe that's a good thing," Nisha said gently. He looked between us for a moment, then nodded. "Maybe it is." Later that week, a small but unexpected incident brought another shift. Ravi came home with a large shopping bag, something expensive, judging by the label. "Anniversary gift," he said, placing it on the table. Nisha frowned, confused. "Our anniversary was last month." He smiled sheepishly. "I know. But I wanted to make it up to you, properly this time. She pulled out the box and gasped. It was a gold-plated wall clock, sleek, modern, gleaming. It's beautiful, she said. It reminded me of you, he replied. She turned to me, hesitating. What do you think, Ma? I studied the clock for a long moment, smooth edges, mirrored surface, elegant but cold. It was lovely, yes, but it had no story. It's very pretty, I said. But sometimes beauty and meaning don't always hold hands. Nisha smiled softly, understanding immediately. Ravi, of course, looked puzzled. That night, when he was asleep, she came to my room with the box. I think I'll keep it in the cupboard, she said quietly. I don't want it replacing the clock we already have. The clock we already have was the one my husband and I had bought the year Ravi was born, slightly crooked, a little faded, but still ticking faithfully. She smiled. That one reminds me of your letter. I nodded, my chest full. Then you've learned well. One evening, as the three of us sat together after dinner, Ravi turned serious. You know, he began slowly, I've been thinking about something. I might have to move to another city for work. It's a big opportunity, but he trailed off, glancing between us. But? I asked. He sighed. It means leaving for at least 6 months. Maybe more. The words sank like a stone in my chest. I'd learned to live with distance before, but now, after everything, it felt like losing a heartbeat just as it had begun to steady again. Before I could speak, Nisha reached for his hand. Go, she said quietly. You should. We'll be fine here. He frowned. You sure? She nodded. Yes, Ma, and I have each other now. He looked at me, half smiling. You two really have changed. I smiled back. Emptier and somehow fuller. Nisha filled it with laughter, small moments, soft music, cooking experiments that often went wrong but somehow tasted right because they were shared. One evening, as we sat watching the rain, she asked quietly, Ma, do you ever wish things had happened differently? That I'd understood sooner. I thought about it. Maybe. But if you had, the lesson wouldn't have been real. Some truths only grow in the soil of mistakes. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. You're too kind. I shook my head. No, just older. We both laughed. Weeks passed. One afternoon, as I was dusting Ravi's bookshelf, I found a small framed photo tucked behind the books. Nisha, me, and Ravi on the couch, smiling genuinely for the first time in years. On the cushion behind us, the golden feather gleamed faintly under sunlight. Underneath the photo, in small handwriting, was a note, Nisha's. Love doesn't come wrapped in newness. It lives in what we choose to keep. I felt tears fill my eyes as I ran my fingers over the glass. In that moment, I realized she had finally understood my husband's letter. She didn't just read it, she had begun to live it. That night, I sat alone with the golden cushion beside me, tracing its stitches. Inside, the letter still rested safe, silent, eternal. I didn't need to reread it anymore. Its message had already passed on, not through words, but through change. I whispered into the quiet air, you'd be proud of her, my love. You'd be proud of us. The rain outside answered with its soft applause against the window. It was late spring when the neighborhood women invited me to speak at the community center again. It had been years since I'd gone, not because anyone stopped asking, but because I'd quietly withdrawn after my husband's death. I used to give small talks on family, traditions, and the fading art of hand embroidery. But somewhere along the way, I had convinced myself that the world no longer wanted the kind of stories I carried. This time, though, it was Nisha who insisted. Go, Ma, she said, tying her dupatta neatly. They'll love your work. And besides, you could teach them that peacock pattern, the one you made for us. The us in her voice made me pause. Once, that word had sounded heavy between us, like ownership. Now it sounded soft, like belonging. Will you come with me? I asked. She smiled. Of course. I'm your assistant now, remember. That afternoon, we walked together through the narrow lanes leading to the center. The sun was high, and the smell of dust and marigolds hung in the air. People greeted us along the way, neighbors, shopkeepers, old friends. But what surprised me most were the glances. Warm, approving, curious glances that lingered a little longer than usual. It took me a moment to realize why. Everyone in the neighborhood had seen the years of distance, the polite smiles, the separate Diwalis, the dinners where we avoided sitting too close. They had also seen the change, Nisha waiting at the gate when I returned from temple, me standing beside her at the market, both of us laughing softly as though the years between us had melted away. People notice peace faster than conflict because peace is rarer. At the center, the room filled quickly. Women of all ages came, some young, restless, eager to learn something vintage, others older, holding nostalgia like a shawl. I began the session the way I always did, with a story. When I was married, I said, threading the needle slowly, my husband once told me that every stitch I make carries a secret, a wish, a memory, a part of me. I never understood what he meant until recently. I could feel Nisha's gaze on me from the front row. I didn't look at her, but I smiled faintly. I told them about embroidery, how patterns aren't just designs, but languages of patience. How sometimes, what we weave into a piece of fabric can outlive us. And though I didn't say it aloud, I thought of that letter inside. The cushion, his words sewn into our forgiveness. When the session ended, several women came up to thank me, to ask for patterns, to share their own stories. One woman, a little older than Nisha, said softly, "It's nice to see you two together again. You remind me of my own mother-in-law. We used to fight too, until I learned she wasn't my rival, just someone trying not to disappear." Her words hit home. Because for years, I had been disappearing quietly, one misunderstanding at a time. That evening, Nisha brought out her phone. "Ma, look," she said excitedly. "Someone from the workshop posted your talk on Facebook. It's getting so many comments." I squinted at the screen. The video showed me sitting by the window at the community hall, sunlight catching my silver hair as I spoke. In the caption, someone had written, "She speaks like a poem. Listen to how she talks about love hidden in fabric." Below, there were dozens of comments, people tagging their mothers, their daughters, writing things like, "This reminds me of my nanny, and I wish I'd appreciated my mother-in-law before it was too late." My heart swelled. Not from vanity, but from gratitude that something as small as a story could reach beyond my house, beyond our past, into the lives of strangers who needed to hear it. Nisha grinned. "You're going viral, Ma." I laughed softly. "I don't even know what that means." "It means," she said, squeezing my hand, "people finally see what I see in you." A few weeks later, Ravi returned from his assignment. When he walked in, the house looked different, not because anything had been redecorated, but because it glowed with something invisible. He dropped his suitcase and looked around. "You two redecorated?" "Not exactly," Nisha said with a grin. "We just rearranged piece." He laughed, walking over to hug me. "You look happy, Ma." "I am," I said simply. He turned to Nisha. "And you, I saw that video everyone's talking about. You filmed it." She nodded, smiling shyly. I wanted people to hear her story. I didn't think it'd spread so much. Ravi looked at me, then at her, realization dawning. "Wait, the peacock embroidery? That's the story." We both nodded. His expression softened. "I always wondered why that gift meant so much to you, Ma." "It wasn't the gift," I said. "It was what it carried." He sat down beside us, his voice low. "Can I know?" For a long moment, I hesitated. The letter had been a secret so long that sharing it felt like opening a door to the past. But then I saw his face, open, curious, ready. I nodded. "It was a letter from your father. He wrote it for the woman you'd marry someday." Ravi's eyes widened. "What did it say?" "It spoke of love," I said softly. "Of patience, humility, and forgiveness. He wanted her to know that building a family is an art, not a battle." He leaned back, quiet. "That sounds like him." Nisha added, "I found it by accident. I think it found me when I needed it most." Ravi looked between us, his eyes shining. Maybe it found all of us. That night, we sat together on the veranda. The sky was a deep, soft indigo, the moon glowing low over the mango tree. The cushion, the one with the golden feather, rested between us. Nisha placed her hand on it gently. "Do you think love really stays, Ma? Even after people go?" I smiled. "Yes. Love stays in the things it touched, in words, in habits, in the way we learn to forgive. It doesn't vanish, it transforms." Ravi nodded, his voice quiet. like a hidden letter inside a gift. I looked at him, my chest tightening. Exactly like that. For the first time in years, we didn't need words to fill the silence. The three of us sat together, wrapped in warmth that wasn't loud or grand, just real. And I realized something simple but profound. Peace doesn't announce itself. It arrives like a whisper, soft, certain, patient. A week later, I received an envelope, just my address written in neat handwriting. Inside was a short note from one of the women who'd attended the workshop. Your story made me call my mother-in-law today. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. Thank you for reminding me that love, even buried, can be found again. I folded the note carefully and placed it beside my husband's photo. See, I whispered to him. Your words are still doing their work. His smile in the photograph seemed almost alive in the lamplight. The monsoon came early that year. Every morning the sound of rain woke me before dawn, steady, rhythmic, familiar. It was the same sound that had echoed through the house when my husband was alive, when Ravi was a child, when life felt simpler. Only this time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt full. Nisha had started her own little art workshop from home. The dining table, once just a place for quiet meals, was now covered with brushes, half-finished sketches, and spools of colorful thread. She laughed often, sometimes with her students, sometimes with herself, and that laughter filled every corner that used to echo with silence. I became her unofficial assistant, helping mix dyes, folding cloth, making tea for visitors. Every so often, she'd glance at me and say, "You started this, Ma. You reminded me that handmade things hold love." And wrote for me. Her eyes softened. Can I read it? I paused, then nodded. You might as well. You already carry his words in your heart. She unfolded it gently, reading aloud. Maya, if you ever find yourself alone in this house, promise me one thing. Don't let silence become your companion. Fill it with creation, so sing, teach, or simply listen. But never stop living through what you love. She looked up, tears brimming. He wrote this for you? I smiled faintly. For all of us, I think. That evening, we decided to frame both letters, his to me and his to her. We placed them side by side on the living room wall, right above the couch where the golden cushion rested. When Ravi returned from work, he stopped mid-step. What's this? Our inheritance, I said simply. 2 letters that kept our family alive. He stared for a long moment, then smiled. You know, Ma, I think Dad would have been proud of you. Of us, I corrected gently. He nodded. Of us. Later that night, as the rain whispered outside, Nisha and I sat by the window, sipping tea. The faint glow of the streetlight spilled across the framed letters on the wall, their ink shimmering softly in the dimness. I used to think love had to be loud, Nisha said quietly. Big gestures, big words, big surprises. But it's the small things that stay, isn't it? It always is, I said. Love doesn't need noise. It just needs presence. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Do you ever think your husband knew this would happen, that his words would connect us like this? I chuckled softly. He didn't plan it. He just believed that kindness travels farther than people expect. It always finds its way. She smiled. Then maybe that's what I'll teach my students, that art is just another form of love. And forgiveness, I added. Yes, she said, nodding. Forgiveness too. Weeks passed, and life found its rhythm again. Sometimes Ravi would join us in the evenings, bringing flowers or sweets. The 3 of us would sit together, talking about ordinary things, weather, work, the neighbor's new dog. It wasn't grand, but it was peace. And peace, I realized, doesn't need applause. It just needs time. One day, Nisha showed me a painting she'd been working on for weeks. It's not finished yet, she said, blushing as she turned the canvas around. It took my breath away. It was a painting of our house, the veranda, the tulsi plant, the soft curtains fluttering, but at the center, there was a golden cushion glowing faintly on the sofa. On it rested 2 overlapping letters, one addressed to the woman who will love my son, the other simply to Maya. The brushstrokes were gentle but sure. The warmth of it made my throat ache. It's beautiful, I whispered. She smiled shyly. I wanted to show that love doesn't always come new. Sometimes it's inherited. I touched her hand. Then you've captured it perfectly. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a silver quiet. I looked at the framed letters, the cushion, the painting propped near the wall. Every object in the room seemed alive with memory, not heavy, not haunted, but peaceful. I thought of how it all began, a careless gesture, a gift thrown away, and a truth buried in silk. If someone had told me then that it would lead us here, to laughter, art, and healing, I wouldn't have believed them. But that's how life works. Sometimes the things we lose return in unexpected shapes. Sometimes forgiveness begins not with an apology, but with understanding. And sometimes, what's thrown away comes back as something even more beautiful. As I blew out the lamp that night, I whispered a small prayer. For the love we lost, for the love we found, and for all the words that still live between stitches. The house sighed softly, like it was exhaling years of silence. And I smiled, knowing that even in the quiet, we were surrounded by stories, all waiting patiently to be remembered. When I look back now, I realize this story was never about a wall hanging or a letter. It was about what we hide in the things we make, the love, the regret, the hope that someone will understand us one day. She threw my gift away once, and for a long time I thought that moment ended something. But maybe it was only the beginning, the sound of truth being unwrapped in an unexpected way. My husband used to say, love doesn't vanish, it just changes rooms. I didn't understand then. Now I do. Love moved from his hands to mine, from thread to letter, from silence to forgiveness. It crossed a generation, stitched itself into a cushion, and came back to sit quietly on our sofa, not demanding to be noticed, just being there. That's what family really is. Not perfection, not agreement, but endurance. We hurt each other. We throw away things we don't yet value. And sometimes, only when it's too late, we realize the treasure was never in the object, it was in the heart that gave it. If you're listening to this, maybe you have something or someone you've dismissed, a message unread, a gift left in a box, a call you never returned. Maybe tonight you can pick it up again. Because the things we toss aside often carry the lessons we're meant to keep. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means seeing the same story with softer eyes. And when you finally do, when you open the door, or the letter, or your own heart, you'll find that love never really left. It was just waiting for you to notice the beauty in the small, quiet stitches that held it all together. Tell me, have you ever realized the value of something only after it was gone? Would you have opened that letter or thrown it away too soon? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know. And if this story touched you, subscribe for more real stories every day. Because sometimes a voice is all it takes to remind us that love, even when lost, can still find its way home.